Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, September 9th, 2024. Charlie Gasparino, my dear friend, my best buddy from Fox, is here with us on how when corporations play politics, they lose. And when they go woke, they go broke. But first, this.
A divisive presidential election is upon us, and the winner is gold. Let me tell you what I mean. Since 2016, our national debt has grown a staggering 70%, and gold has increased by 60%. Do you own gold? I do. I bought my gold in February 2023, and it has risen 33%. You've heard me talk about Lear Capital, the company I trust. Let me tell you why. Recently, Kevin DeMeritt, who is the founder and CEO of Lear, assisted the FBI in discovering a nationwide gold theft ring. And because of Kevin's good work, the FBI caught these people before they could steal anymore. That's why I have been saying the people at Lear are good people. They believe in America. They believe in their product, and they're honest to the core. So take action right now, my friends. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com. Protect your savings and retirement before it's too late. 800-511-4620, LearJudgeNap.com. Remember, hope is not a strategy, but gold is.
Charlie Gasparino, my dear friend, welcome here. Welcome to the show. I have to tell everybody that the reason for this show in large measure is because of your twisting my arm in the days after I left Fox, suggesting I'd be happy and fulfilled doing this. And of course, it's been successful beyond our wildest imaginings.
I'm not beyond my imaginings. I had faith in you. I know you so well. You are Mr. Libertarian as far as I'm concerned. You articulate it better than anybody. You know the Constitution better than anybody. Thank God you're not a warmonger. I mean, you're for freedom. And
well, thank you, Charlie. But you are not here just because you're my friend and best buddy from my 24 years at Fox. You're here because you are one of the most astute explainers and understanders of what corporations do, how they acquire wealth, what they do that's good, what they do that's bad. So one of the interesting things that struck me in your book, Go Woke, Go Broke, is corporate CEOs that are progressives. You know, when I was a kid, I always thought, these rich fat cats, they're conservative Republicans. How did CEOs become progressives, or how did progressives become CEOs?
It's a great question. It didn't happen overnight. I would say the CEO class was never conservative libertarian as we are. There was always a sort of dance between big government and big business. Right. Eisenhower famously warned about it, right? The military industrial complex was not just the military, it was in partnership with the industrial complex, right?
Right.
And the perniciousness of having big government and big business married, is scary. And, this has always been going on. The woke part is a much more of a new phenomenon. And, I trace it back somewhere to the early 1990s, where it really started to seep in to the zeitgeist of corporate America. There was stuff like socially responsible investing. I mean, who can be against that? Okay, I want investing that makes the world a better place. That's what it sounds. But it had a coercive sort of tonality to it, but it was a backwater. Slowly, this whole notion of corporate responsibility and what it means to be corporately responsible, which was much more articulated as essentially left-wing dogma. In some cases, straight up fascism, slowly becomes part of the zeitgeist. And, I trace it without giving away too much of the book because I want people to buy it. I trace it. It starts at the UN, like all crappy ideas, right? It starts to populate at Davos, where this notion of corporate responsibility and a new investing style known as environmental social governance investing, which essentially is asset managers going out there and prodding the companies to adopt certain causes that are deemed politically correct. And,
Ah,
one of those causes, obviously, reducing the carbon footprint, which became a huge issue, particularly during the Obama years. Then it starts getting into the sort of bigger picture lobby groups and the functional, the rulers of corporate America through the Business Roundtable, where they defenestrate the great Milton Friedman in 2019 or 2018, I believe it is. Check my date. Where Jamie Dimon, the great CEO of J.P. Morgan, is considered America's banker, one of the best in the world.
whom you and I both know.
We know him well, and he came out and he said, no longer would we be holding what Milton Friedman, the great libertarian economist, said as shareholder capitalism, where CEOs, have kind of a duty just to do good, not through their capitalist endeavors, not go out there in the political world to not pollute the ocean and dump PCBs in the Hudson River like GE got nailed for back in the day. But their main responsibility is within the confines of ethics and legality to do what they're paid to do, and that's run a company, shareholder capitalism.
Right.
Jamie Dimon threw that out in 2018 for something known as stakeholder capitalism, which is just another way of discussing ESG and then essentially all the sort of woke policies that surround what you hear today: diversity, equity, inclusion.
Some of the woke stuff is extreme and absurd.
It is.
Tell us the Budweiser story. I mean, this is ridiculous, and most people know about this because we all saw these crazy ads.
Right. Well, what was interesting about this, and listen, I just want to be clear. I use proper pronouns, Judge. I don't care how you want to live your life as an adult. Okay. I'm from the sort of Ayn Rand school. You got total liberty until it infringes upon mine. And I think that's where that's where the sort of, the train came off the tracks in recent years. And the Budweiser commercial was one of these sort of examples of just how far this corporate wokeness went. I mean, in Budweiser, which is no longer owned by Anheuser-Busch, like a pure American, remember the Clydesdales and Spuds McKenzie?
Right.
They're gone. Since 2008, it's been owned by a very woke, a very Davos-centric company called InBev. It's actually known as AB InBev right now. They have very strict DEI components. They wanted to DEI their influencers because they were going out in the DEI spectrum to include gender diversity as part of their influencers. They made it was essentially a mandate to put in, certain ads, a transsexual. And this was not a transsexual who, again, was just living her life and saying, I am who I am and I want to be me. This is an activist transsexual, someone named Dylan Mulvaney, who, chronicled her transition from a man to a woman, on TV. Essentially, a lot of people thought she was appealing to kids in some of these things.
Well, did they actually think that this would sell beer? I mean, that's their job. Now I'm getting back to Milton Friedman. Their job is to maximize profits for the investor.
Right, not change
they
the world.
think Dylan Mulvaney would sell more beer?
That's the problem. Who knows? But they had to meet DEI mandates in their influencers. And to be quite frank, if you're going to go there, if you're saying, listen, I'm at Budweiser, we need to, add DEI to our influencer mix, and we want to we want gender diversity in that. Dylan Mulvaney is the perfect person to pick from that standpoint. Dylan Mulvaney is a major trans activist. Again, by the way, Dylan Mulvaney interviewed President Biden months before the ad hit that blew up Budweiser. So she's out there. She's out there politically. That's the crazy thing, and that's where this sort of like strikes me and it strikes my libertarian bona fides a certain way. It kind of disgustes me because it was almost compulsory. It was in your face. Sometimes people just want to have a beer.
Right.
Do you ever think of that?
Yeah.
Is that the essence of our Constitution? Just leave me alone and do what you want to do.
Right.
We all kind of live our lives and we bring our
Tell
kids
us
to
the
school.
story of the Silicon Valley Bank.
Well, that's what got me on the book, because I'm covering this bank that, is blowing up. And you know me, I do a lot of just straight business stories. And it obviously was blowing up. And by the way, there's still a lot of, toxicity in the regional banking system because a lot of these banks, in order to compete, have really horrible balance sheets. Silicon Valley Bank was one of those. But I noticed something about Silicon Valley Bank as it was blowing up. It was spending a lot of time on DEI and diversity and ESG. I mean, it was touting this every 5 minutes. I did a little research and I'm like, why were they doing like the chief risk officer was talking about DEI? This is the risk officer who should have known about the balance sheet. Why is this person obsessing with DEI? And so the initial angle of the book was about Silicon Valley Bank and how this bank blew up because of corporate wokeness. And then we realized within short order, this is a much bigger book. It's not just the Silicon Valley Bank. It actually became a few pages in the book. It's Budweiser, as we mentioned. It's Target. It's Disney. Disney would gratuitously, under Bob Iger, who's now back with the company, and I talk about the implosion and how Bob Chapek, who got ousted, tried to fight back against the wokeness and he got like whipsawed. They would gratuitously insert same-sex kissing scenes into cartoons that made no sense. Target, like if you're a woman with 2 kids and you're shopping at Target, by the way, you're middle class, working class, it's hard. Childcare is expensive. So you take your kids shopping with you. And as you go through like aisles and aisles and aisles of tuck-friendly bathing suits. And, there was kind of a revolt of the working class here. You see it in a lot of ways and throughout this book where people are like tired of being proselytized by companies who nobody elected to run their lives. And then people have to work at these companies, Judge. That's the other thing. And I got granular on that too.
Have any CEOs fought back against this? I mean, our mutual friend, I don't know if he still actually runs Home Depot and all the other gazillion things he owns, including the largest hospital in Manhattan, Ken Langone. Have people like that fought back against this?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's funny you mentioned Ken Langone. He was the founder of Home Depot, as you know. His co-founder, Bernie Marcus, is part of the pushback. And I interviewed Bernie at length. And Bernie actually created an organization to counter corporate wokeness run by a guy named Ed Renzi. If you know anything about Ed Renzi, he ran McDonald's USA. The reason why there is a McNugget is because of Ed Renzi, to be honest with you. I'm not touting McNuggets, but Ed, was at home one day and he was watching TV and he saw that Bob Chapek, he didn't understand the backstory. And if he's read the book, he has read the book. He knows the backstory, why Chapek had to do what he did, started opposing a Florida law that basically outlawed teaching of sex to toddlers, sex ed to toddlers. And he was sitting there saying, what the hell is this? Why are we wasting shareholder money? And, why are we taking a stand on this thing? I mean, this is like, shouldn't we just be worried about putting kids shouldn't they be worried about putting kids in the park? This is antithetical to everything I've done when I was a CEO. And he was a very inclusive CEO. If you know anything about McDonald's, they opened up branches. They sought out to try to get sort of franchisees that were African-American back in the day because, they noticed that in African-American neighborhoods, a lot of McDonald's, everybody worked there was black, but the franchisees weren't. So they Ray Kroc and Ed Renzi went out and did that. That's the type of diversity that's not in your face. It's actually real. It's not proselytizing. It's good business.
Right.
He saw just the opposite was going on in corporate America, particularly at Disney. So he launched a counterattack, and I get into it in great detail in the book.
Wow. Are modern CEOs with their 8-figure incomes and private jets and huge staffs cowards?
Bernie Marcus says it at the end. They are cowards. I think they are. And in this sense, they, every now and then, like Jamie Dimon will say something remarkably like honest. Same with Larry Fink. JP Morgan is Jamie Dimon. Larry Fink's at BlackRock, the king of ESG. But for the most part, most of these guys don't. And they're afraid of upsetting the Human Rights Campaign and the Center for American Progress, which are both left-wing groups, particularly the Human Rights Campaign, who are trying to enforce woke mandates upon them, including DEI and various levels of hiring. It was remarkable how much Disney and these big companies allowed the Human Rights Campaign to sort of the tail wag the dog, so to speak, there, and mandate stuff. Disney, I was able to get my hands on a document that showed how much DEI permeates the entire ecosystem, from the top, the board member, all the way down to suppliers. And I'm not talking about DEI in the notion we made great efforts to go to the Black community to bring people. We are talking about quotas, which is patently illegal, particularly now that the Supreme Court has ruled that college admissions cannot be done based on race, right, and ethnicity. So I was just blown away. And a lot of it's these activist groups that they're apparently afraid of a boycott, or they're afraid of, the Twitter storm, when in reality, 90% of America, I don't know the exact number, but it's huge swaths of Americans. They want nothing to do with this. If Americans like corporate wokeness, Judge, Budweiser wouldn't have fallen from the number 1 beer to the number 3. Target lost tons of money. Stock went down during that whole controversy over its overt and sort of political, gay pride month that went, stretched the bounds. Disney stock has not moved since 2014. That's Bob Iger, the now CEO of Disney, who had to come back after Chapek got blown out. But right. Bob Iger's the reason why Disney went woke. And I get into all that sort of background between him and Chapek. That's a part of the book that's a lot of corporate there's a lot of corporate drama around the wokeness issue. And that to me, that was one of the more fascinating parts. That and Larry Fink, who was the king of ESG, environmental social governance investing, made a lot of money, and then has this sort of coming to Jesus moment about it. And I talk about his transformation, why he backed off it after being the champion that, didn't miss a camera opportunity to tout it as, right, saving the world. So, what I tried to do with this book, Judge, it's not listen, this is, I tried to make it a fun read. Okay. It is
a fun read. I mean, I read it over the weekend. It's enjoyable. It's informative, and it's easy to read.
Yeah. And
it's actually like listening to you at dinner.
Minus the curse words, although I'm sure there's a couple F-bombs in there.
There are. I promised a lot of people I would ask you this. It's a little off from the book. Isn't a tariff a sales tax?
Yes. And, if there's one part.
Man, I wish Trump would understand that.
I go back and forth with this, Judge, and I'll say this. I covered his economic speech at the Economic Club of New York, and you might have seen me on TV talk about it a little bit.
It was last week.
Yeah, I thought he was incredibly detailed on it. I mean, I was impressed by his mastery of economics as someone who covers economics. I mean, Trump now he was a businessman, but people seem to think of him as like some sort of, just a spoiled rich kid. But, he does get it. And I think what he is aiming for on these things, and I could be wrong. It depends on who's going to have his ear. And no one really knows will it be Larry Kudlow who has his ear, or Steve Forbes, or will it be Steve Moore, or will it be, Steve Miller and people like that, Peter Navarro. I got the impression that he wants to use it as a tool. That this whole thing about a 10% across the board is sort of a bargaining chip against our trading partners. Take China out of the equation, because the Chinese are. We can argue about how we have to deal with them. That's a huge sort of that's a whole other segment that we might want to do.
Let me
they are
knowing you were there, because I saw your report on Fox Business. We took a clip from him last week. Here he is.
Would you strengthen or modify any of these economic sanctions programs, particularly Russia, including the pipeline you mentioned?
Well, it's a great question. The problem with what we have with sanctions, and I was a user of sanctions, but I put them on and take them off as quickly as possible, because ultimately it kills your dollar and it kills everything the dollar represents, and we have to continue to have that be the world currency. I think it's important. I think it would be losing a war. If we lost the dollar as the world currency, I think that would be the equivalent of losing a war. That would make us a third world country, and we can't let it happen. So I use sanctions very powerfully against countries that deserve it, and then I take them off. Because look, you're losing Iran, you're losing Russia, China is out there trying to get their currency to be the dominant currency, as you know better than anybody. All of these things are happening. You're losing so many countries because there's so much conflict with all of these countries that you're going to lose that, and we can't lose that. So I want to use sanctions as little as possible.
You were impressed with him.
I like that. I mean, that was a great answer, wasn't it? I mean,
Yes.
He understands that, and it made me think that this whole tariff thing is kind of a bargaining chip because, sanctions and tariffs are kind of almost, they're the flip side of each other, right? No, I think a sanction is.
Let me tell you why I think tariffs are dangerous, and it goes to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court said tariffs are part of foreign policy. Therefore, the president can impose them on his own. It doesn't even require a vote of the Congress. He gets mad at Olaf Schultz one day, and suddenly he puts a $50,000 tariff on Mercedes. That hurts a lot of people in the U.S.
I know, but tariffs are like a step further on that scale of imposition of economic harm on enemies. But the fact that he understood the tariff argument from that's almost a libertarian standpoint, right? I mean, what good is it to debase the dollar, to stop free trade, to stop essentially Americans from making money? He understands that. I mean, can you imagine Kamala Harris explaining that? I can't.
We'll find out tomorrow night. Charlie, Chris, put the full screen up again. Charlie, thank you so much. There it is. Go woke, go broke. The inside story of the radicalization of corporate America by the great Charlie Gasparino. Charlie, tomato sauce soon.
My pleasure. We love having you over. Jen says she just wants to send her love to you. You're the brother from another mother, and I'm so proud of your new career here.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you, Charlie. All the best, my friend. See you soon.
You got it.
Great guy. Wonderful human being. Coming up tomorrow, Tuesday, Professor Jeffrey Sachs at 11 in the morning Eastern, Matt Ho at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Karen Kwiatkowski at 3, and all the way from Moscow, Pepe Escobar, always worth waiting for, at 4 o'clock. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.